Hello, everybody. The family's back together here around lifelong upskilling. I just no, I don't want to take the tagline that you will see in a moment. That was is amazing. So you have something amazing to look forward here. So, and you know that because you're looking at the gentleman who are going to present today, the NewSkillup team, who is working on this lifelong upskilling that we all desperately need and are going to need even more so in the future. And the exciting part from how I see it is, regardless of who I'm talking to in any industry, this is something that resonates with everybody. When I say, hey, we're working on this lifelong upskilling, we all need to acquire new mindsets, new skill sets, to really be able to contribute in the future and feel that we are relevant and that we are part of society in these things. Everybody's like, exactly, how do you do that? So we have the experts today, and the masters of our community, our mentors, Klaus and Peter and Gabriel, to give us an update on where are we today in terms of the learning that we have acquired, some of the experiment that's been running, and what the current thoughts are on how to move forward from here. We have also a new sprint team that started on a similar mission. So, and they will be mentored by Klaus and Peter and Gabriel. So we are kind of amplifying, we are kind of doubling our capability in that aspect. We really want to solve this problem. We really want to create a solution that could easily be, I think it could easily be a value proposition that will be adopted worldwide. So it's going to be exciting. So welcome everybody to this update from the NewSkillup team. And with that, and without further ado, I want to hand over to, I think, Klaus first. Is that how we do it, Klaus?
Gabriel will start, but I'll just share my screen first.
Yeah, let's share your screen if you want, Klaus, please.
Yes, I will. If I can find out how to enlarge my, there it is.
Exactly.
Hold on a moment.
Yes, it worked just before.
Yeah.
And
here we are.
Families coming back together. Yes, there we are. Over
works.
to you, Gabriel.
Nice.
Take us away.
Thank you, Lars, for the introduction. So welcome everybody, and as Lars already mentioned, we are the NewSkillup team that we were born in the last sprint for EducateforLife. So it's really nice for being here to keep working together and facing this incredible challenge that we have ahead. So we are talking about this global challenge, and that's why we wanted to reinforce the idea that we need to upskill or die. So there is no middle ground, there is no option. So we need to move forward to really find a strong and sustainable solution for this challenge. So move forward, let's go. So let's talk about a little bit about the idea of this really quick meeting.
Wait a moment, it doesn't shift.
Just
why doesn't it shift?
Just I think you just press enter, it will move forward, or the arrow that would go.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Do you want me to try to share my screen?
I'll try this one then. Sorry about that.
No worries. It's part of this process. Technology is always deciding.
Yeah.
Okay,
What
so
able you
let's
to
good. So the idea very quickly is to share a little bit about what we are going to do, share about some information about this global challenge, some statistics or some information that we think that it's relevant, and then move forward a little bit about talking about our initiative, what are we doing, and what we can do as next steps. So let's go. So very quickly, the idea is just to, again, to present the NewSkillup initiative. Some of you probably already heard about us, some of you know, so that would be the first time as an introduction to our initiative. So again, we are already want to tell a little bit more about what we are doing. And obviously on all these type of meetings, our idea is how we can enrich our team, how we can enrich our community, to spread about the voice about these important issues, and finding at the end which are going to be our next steps. So let's start talking a little bit about this global challenge that we are facing. So we already talked about a couple of ideas of why this is so important. I think that we spend a lot of time talking about the why, and we have a really clear situation on why this is so important. But at the end, it's always good to reinforce and to refresh some of the statistics or the numbers that we are seeing just to justify our initiative. But the idea mainly is that if we keep with the same education system, the skill level, the gap is going to be huge. Every year it will increase every year. So if you see there, as the life continues and the adult life, this skill gap, it's getting bigger and bigger. So we need to start to think in education system in a different way. And it's not just education system for our kids and for our young guys, but just for the adult too, because this skill gap continues to grow and will generate a really, really big impact on the society. So when we are talking about the impact on the society, and I would love to start talking about this upskilling challenge, more like the next big crisis that this world will need to face. Maybe similar of what were happening with the climate change crisis, that it took a lot of years to recognize as a crisis and to start doing things, even though we still are very far behind in the climate change crisis. Imagine what would happen in these type of things. So if we are thinking about the impact on the society of this upskilling gap crisis, there are a lot of things and some very frightening ideas of what would happen in the society with this crisis. And so we are talking about more violent, inequal societies, a lot of losing of sense, increasing of polarization. So just as an example, we had a meeting, Lars, it was this week, with, I don't remember his name, Eden, the guy who's like an expert of technology. And he was mentioning, for example, just an example of the impact of the technology on the workforce, that right now we have a lot of truck companies that they are hiring young people that they used to be gamers to drive their trucks through virtual reality. So now it's the question of what we are going to do with all the truck drivers that we have in the world. So at the end, it's like, okay, you have a new works that are going to be created through the technology, but at the end, it's not just an amount of how many jobs you are creating and how many jobs are disappearing, but what we're going to do with the people that are going to start losing their jobs, and how we can do to really help them to get into the track. So we have a really huge impact on the society, and again, a huge impact in terms of individuals. And I see most of the things that really generate a lot of lost on sense without having a really clear path of the future. So that's a huge problem. And again, if you're talking about companies, of the impact of this process, we are seeing a lot of lack of creation, value creation, competitiveness on possibilities to grow on companies. So that's a huge impact on the economy as a whole. So at the end, we gather some information that we think that is interesting. And this is a study made in US with a lot of companies. So if you see here, it's like, okay, everybody has this common sense about like, this is a huge thing that needs to be resolved. And as Lars already mentioned, whenever you are talking with anybody, we agree that these skill gaps and the need of upskilling, it's something really important and an impact on their businesses. Although just everybody agree on that, just a few things are happening really that generating impact. And if you see how the managers of the companies are thinking how to respond to this impact or to this problem, mainly they are thinking about hiring new employees instead of skilling, hiring gig workers, and we agree on the importance of this type of staff on demand that we promote, but here is how we can do to get all these people inside this type of economies. So this again, another important index that we are looking, how the CEOs of the big companies are seeing this problem. As you can see, for the last couple of years, this concern has risen significantly. So every major CEO of big companies now are thinking about this as a problem or as a challenge for their businesses. And it's very important when you start thinking about this, about upskilling, where to start in terms of the skills that are needed. And this is a really comprehensive study from McKinsey that mentioned, as you can see in the matrix on your right, you will see on the upper right quadrant, those are the skills that we think that at the end, through the McKinsey study, need to be addressed. So you are thinking about, we are moving from skills that were more physical and manual through skills that are more technological, obviously, but very important to start thinking about social and emotional skills. Usually those are skills that maybe are left behind, and we always think about technological skills and things that are related to technology, but at the end, to cope with all these changes, to cope with all this upskilling process, all our workforce will need more and more social and emotional skills to develop through this very uncertain environment. So that's a very, very important issue. And those are going to be the main skills that we should be working on in the near future. So now, Klaus, if you want, you can continue with that.
Yeah. You know the expression Industry 4.0, which was launched by the World Economic Forum some years ago, and it really opens up new and different opportunities. It's not like many jobs will be lost solely. There will be created more jobs than lost, as far as people who have studied this can say. And there are some new and different opportunities here, because you can boost value creation in companies and in society by upskilling. Skills are becoming an essential strategic resource, and lifelong adult education, as Gabriel has already mentioned, is something which is talked about, but it's an empty concept. Very few are working on it, and by far not enough. We have chosen to work with SMEs, and we'll talk more about that. Peter will tell us why we have selected SMEs. But there will be enormous benefits and value if companies will look at upskilling, education, training as an investment and not a cost. Many companies look at it as a cost, but it could really be an investment if it's need-based, goal-oriented, strategic, planned and measured. There are some very good examples of what skills are worth. World Economic Forum has issued a report that skills will be the currency of the future for people. And I have a couple of examples of what it's worth. You know that YouTube was acquired some years ago, was sold some years ago, and there were 25, the value of each employee in YouTube at the time of acquisition was $25 million. In Instagram, when that was sold, there were 13 people, and each of those were $77 million worth. And when WhatsApp was sold, there were 55 people, and each of those were $245 million worth. And why were they worth that? Because they had the skills to make such a company. So skills can be immensely much worth, and really companies in the future will base their existence on skills and not so much anymore on assets. So here are some summaries of what we have seen in the global challenge. The traditional model of learn, do, and retire doesn't work anymore. Many tasks are lost to technology, we all know that. Skills are outdated in 3 to 5 years. And 55% of all employed needs significant skilling. A lot of people will need to have core skills, some new core skills. But as Gabriel has already said, the lack of skilled employees hamper value creation, competitiveness, and economic growth everywhere, and it already does that. There's an enormous lack of some kinds of specialists. What are we then trying to do? This is our massive transformative purpose, accelerating adult lifelong learning globally. That's a massive transformative purpose, as you can all realize. And what have we done so far? We're trying to boost lifelong learning culture in SMEs. And we want to create a global community for that. Peter will talk more about it. What have we done? We were born at this first sprint process with Lars in 2019. And our initiative is a result of that sprint process. Now we are at the time we were focusing on defining the scope of the initiative. And what have we done until now? We are on the Mighty Network. We have a landing page. We have a webinar to show people what we're doing. We have a core team and 14 members in our community. But we need much more traction and credible influencers, people who can really talk about this in societies all around the world. We are in the process of talking to SMEs, and really we have done that for quite some time. But it's very difficult to get into connection with people in SMEs. Marketing doesn't work. SMEs managers have focus on day-to-day activities. They have a large workload, and skills development is of no priority to many of them. And the people, the adults in the companies, don't feel very much need for skills development. Some of them do, but they don't really realize what to do about it. And there are many barriers for development of new skills. People will feel that's strange, that's nothing for me, and so on. And then there are limited offers from companies. So this is our team, Peter, Gabriel, and I. Our own motivation is that we have continuously developed our skills, all of us. And the results for us is that we have had freedom to choose among opportunities. We have had safe and inspiring jobs, and we've had a good life. And we would like that everybody had the same opportunities to and the same life as we have. So over to Peter. Are you there, Peter?
I am now unmuted, so I hope you can hear me. And I may be black on your screen, so I'm in the dark, but I hope to be able to enlighten you guys a little bit on the further status of our activities, a little bit of a recap of what we have done. And today, I mean, our newest initiatives are that we are trying now to reach out also on a one-to-one basis to more high-level influencers, and both globally and locally. Like, for instance, Schnabe, Jim Hagenom Schnabe, who's chairman of actually two big global companies like Siemens and Maersk, but he is also a board member of the World Economic Forum. And at the recent Davos meeting, there was also much more interest around education and the need for upskilling. So we're trying to get hold of Schnabe. Also, most of you probably know Salim Ismail, and we have an ongoing contact. We're trying to get Salim also to be aware of this. But also locally, we are reaching out to politicians. For instance, the Danish Minister of Employment, he also participated at the Davos, and we reach out to him, as well as other people in media and such. So that's kind of one-to-one now. But then we have this ongoing effort trying to use more spreading the word, but as Klaus mentioned, it's kind of difficult, but we use this standard social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and such. And then, of course, what we're doing right now, we have online meetings and also our website. So we have these three ways of working at the moment. And we also have an idea, at least, of what could be one way to start making this useful and making this actionable, and that is but it's a tentative solution, and we're not saying this is how it's going to be. We're open to discuss solutions, but at least we like to bring together and create this community of EdTech experts, trainers, users, and organizations, and so that in the end we can create some impact amongst the SMEs. And shortly I will come back to why we have chosen the SMEs, but I think we should just present you one further slide before we go more into that with the SMEs, and that is, we appreciate that, I mean, we would like to work on ways to upskill people, upskill adults and adults in SMEs. But alone, that is not an effort that is enough. We need to see it in a broader perspective, because I mean there is this need to, in companies, to have role models that the employees can look up to and see what they are doing, and then they want to follow their leaders. And there's a need to have a work with values and beliefs, and there need to be structures in place. And we are aware that our efforts working with upskilling need to fit into that model somewhat way to be effective. But okay, so now finally, why did we choose SMEs? Well, I mean, one thing is sheer numbers. I mean, in numbers, I mean, it's expected that there are around, as you see, maybe 2 billion of the adult employees, they work in SMEs globally. And certainly when we look at it in Europe and the US, I mean, we have more than 50 million SMEs. Probably 2/3 of all employees are employed, of 2/3 of all employees are employed in SMEs. And also, when you speak about adults, most of the education that will have an impact in society, we believe needs to be combined with working within the SMEs. And focusing on managers, we need to get the managers on board, otherwise we'll get no effect. So it's the SMEs, they really have a challenge here, because if they don't get on board with the upskilling, they could be doomed for failure. But we also have a strong belief that SMEs, being small, agile, could be launching pads for EXOs, exponentially growing organizations. As it is today, from our experience, the last 15 years, I've worked with SME owners, and I've done that either being chairman of the board of a number of companies, as a business broker, or as a consultant. And it's also fits with my experience that the skill updating is mostly done on an ad hoc basis. And also, I mean, we say it's based, often it's actually, there's a reluctance to engage employees in long educations and trainings to give them exams and titles. There's actually a fear that you may lose your employees as soon as they have their new passed their exams. So it's a challenge for SME managers how to go about doing this. It's like, yeah, just before we get to this slide, in a way, my experience, it's kind of like if you look at the SMEs of the 20th century, the ones that started up in the 20th century, they're kind of like between a rock and a hard place. I mean, in terms of also facing upskilling, because on one side you are facing the big corporations, and they have staffs and they have HR departments that can for sure help managers in finding out how to upskill and people and what is required. And on the other hand, you have the startups, and they are certainly born digitized and digital, and they are upskilled already. But the SME manager of a 20th century SME kind of needs to both plot the course and steer the boat at the same time, and has very little help. So that's kind of the challenge. Yeah. But it seems that perhaps there is a movement going in a positive direction here. We at least see some of this, that there's could be a trend that we go from focusing on titles, like what kind of job title have you had? I've been a sales manager, a production manager, or a craftsman, and into a situation where it is more skills related, kind of like the the picture that Gabriel showed you initially, where you have a plotting of your individual skills rather than your job titles, and thus you can have a more precise description of what are your potential and what are your potential needs for upskilling. I came across this interesting question at the bottom here. How nice would it be if we kind of had each and every one of us, probably anonymously, but in the cloud, a skill profile, which was then kind of like the common currency. I mean, identifying what skills we have and what skills we would like to obtain. And people could then request to have a meeting or get in contact with you based on your skill profile. And then if you wanted, you could open up your skill profile and you could be in touch. So that's kind of what we're working with, but also as Klaus showed earlier on, we are a small team and we certainly would like to become a bigger team. So if you're interested, we'll certainly post you a link to sign up and join us. And the question could be, why should you participate? If you take the next slide, Klaus. And it's kind of obvious, I guess, for your organization, you could get visibility and maybe new business by getting in contact with like-minded people or with SMEs in need of upskilling. And personally, of course, it could grow yourself, and you could become a member of our global growing network. We would hope that you would join us. But also, of course, you should know that we are not alone here. But we are probably, our focus on SMEs, I believe, is unique. But you're all aware of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and number 4 addresses quality in education, of course, on a much broader scale, but nonetheless focus on education, which is also upskilling. On the EU, there has been an EPALE activity going on for actually a couple of years, where it's a kind of open community of adult learning professionals, and they provide sort of information relevant for adult learning practitioners. So there's also focus in EU. And then, of course, just lately on the World Economic Forum at Davos, it was formed like that is a need for a reskilling revolution and the ambition of reskilling 1 billion people by 2030. And if you remember, 1 to 2 billion adults are expected to be employed in SMEs. So we can address a lot of them with working with the SMEs. So that's the end of my part of the presentation. I think we're open for questions now.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that, again, just to reinforce what we were saying here is that everybody agrees on the challenge and the importance of changing the approach of learning on companies. So now the key here is how we can think about this community as a platform to leverage on projects to really create this exponential movement in terms of upskilling. So that's the biggest challenge that we have now.
Yeah. What do you think about
Excellent.
it, you participants?
Yes, you participants out there, what do you think?
I have a question. This is amazing. It's really exciting. I was there when you were kind of putting it together, and it's very nice to see how far it's evolved. Question wasn't clear to me. You had this slide about that had circles on it with the different, I think, user types or
Yeah.
Can you? So what I was wondering is that, so you said that employers don't prefer to upskill their employees and they don't get the value of reskilling so much. And then you did mention that the focus is on SME managers, but they're busy fighting fires and they're not thinking about reskilling, etc. So in this diagram specifically, so you have curation, information, counseling in the center, and you have all these suppliers and learning developers, I guess, are suppliers. Are the SMEs suppliers in this sense, or are they the target customer or a participant? How do SMEs fit into the picture when you say we've selected as SMEs as our focus?
Well, they are customers definitely, and they are our target, as you have seen, because that's where the grown-ups are, the adults are. But they could easily also contribute, and we see a need, a very big need for SMEs to be in connection with each other. Many SMEs have a very limited, have very few people to talk with. Maybe they talk with a couple of people in the board and some others, but if they could interact with SMEs in the same situation, they would definitely get much more value out of this thing here. So we also see that the community or the platform should enable SMEs to exchange views and help each other and so on.
Okay, so can I just ask a follow-on question to this, because I'm a little bit confused, because you use the term upskilling and then reskilling and then new skills. They all have a little slightly different scope, I guess I could say. Yeah. So when I think of an SME, maybe the SME founder or owner needs to upskill or whatever. They may need to reskill some of their employees, but what is their incentive to join this community that is talking about lifelong learning and new skilling? I guess I'm just really trying to understand your business model.
There's one, it's a good question. Even though, as I said, that I experience many SME managers a bit fearful of placing their employees on longer educational journeys, because what happens at the end. Then on the other hand, it's also typical that they also often keep employees for long periods of time. So thus, I mean, it should make sense for also continuous lifelong learning of those employees. I think we can present that to them.
But there's a whole range of opportunities, because there's much talk about micro-learning and learning while you work. And these ways of learning are very efficient. So SMEs could make 1 or 2 or 3 employees look at some skill they need and through this platform find ways to upskill or reskill or whatever. But what they could also do would be much more strategic. They could think about which skills should we add in order to change our business model and grow quickly, instead of just optimizing what we are trying to do right now. Yeah, so there's a whole range of things they can do.
Yeah, and I think, Javin, what you are asking, I think that's a really a key question, because at the end, we need to think about what are the incentives, that we have the SMEs to invest on upskilling or reskilling instead of going to the market and then hire different people with the right skills that they have. And that's what at the end it's happening now. So when we are thinking about these incentives, I think we should put again all the stakeholders in place. And we saw in some countries that we have some incentives from governments to really invest on training. So I think that's a good way to start thinking how to involve all the stakeholders, because at the end, the impact that this process will have impact the society as we saw. So we need to have all these stakeholders in place and not just thinking about the incentives of the SMEs by themselves, but how we can create this right environment for them to have the right incentives to go through this path that, again, it's more difficult. It requires more time, more investment, rather to go to the market and hire staff on demand that we are seeing. So we need to start thinking about all these stakeholders to think about a solution. It's not just like why they are going to do it.
And I'm trying to keep my train of thought as I get new understanding here. And I don't want to take over all the time for the questions, but thinking about the SMEs and the learning suppliers and the community itself, like what are the roles in the community and what is the platform providing? Because there are trainers out there, there are training companies, learning and service providers out there. Is it to provide better access and retrieval of the right pieces that an SME might need? Or like what are the different uses of the platform and the roles within that community?
Good, and I think, and we were discussing this previously, and I think one of the main things that this platform could provide is, like, usually when you are again talking about all these trainers or all these services that they are already there, it's a very atomized industry. You have a lot of facilitators and a lot of trainers. They are offering their services. So, and usually what happens with SMEs is that they lack the amount of people that they need for hire, for example, training for their companies. So because maybe they have 2 or 3 people that need to train. So one of the main ideas of this platform could provide is the critical mass to these managers or these SMEs to access a specific training. So imagine that you are in a specific area and you have, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 other companies surrounded or very close to your company. So now, maybe through this platform, you can hire a training and sharing the cost between 10 and 20 different companies. So now that's difficult to do it. You don't have that contact, you don't have that information. It's very hard to coordinate that process. So I think one of the main enablers of this platform is really getting them the access to this type of trainings. If you are thinking about training, like in presence training, then if you are moving to the online, it's another thing. But for SMEs, I still think that in presence, it's very important. And having this platform could bring these SMEs together and enable at the end a process of training that without it could be impossible.
Got it.
What we couldn't do, hopefully, is to make some SMEs aware of this and work with it and show results. And as soon as some SMEs start to showing results by working with this area, they may become examples for many others, and hopefully this would be a growing activity. So the SMEs themselves could work as enablers. On the other hand, we also have to make people, politicians and people in organizations and so on, talk much more about it. Focus is still on the formal education, that is for young people. Most of public budgets go to young people, and when they leave their formal education, there's almost no more education anymore. So budgets should be reallocated also, and focus should be much more on the 2/3 of the population, or the employees, or the grown-ups who are not reskilled right now. So from top down and from bottom up, much more activity is needed.
Yeah, but that could be, and one of the questions was how this community will support itself. And at the end, it's again enabling this type of services like a marketplace. That could be definitely a way of sustaining the community, and that's one of the ideas that we can move forward.
Yes. More questions or comments?
There are a couple of questions on the chat.
Yes, I saw some.
So the customer journey, we don't have it yet, Diana. We would love to have it already in place. So that's like a work in progress. So I think this is like, as we mentioned, we are thinking about different approaches and solutions. So definitely we're gonna start working on that in the near future. I would love to help us with that if you want.
Carmen, you asked what kind of skill sets is being looked for. And there is a couple of slides in our presentation which shows reports or results of reports which have looked into it. McKinsey, for instance, is looking very much into it, and other PricewaterhouseCoopers and so on are looking at the skills needs now in the future and the changes which are going on. So it's not quite unknown terrain we are in. More questions?
Carmen was asking or clarifying, she was meaning which skill sets you're looking for your team. So in your open invitation to join your team. Yeah.
Primarily interesting in what we're doing, because it's really difficult what we're trying to do, of course, and it's a moonshot. 1 billion people upskilled or reskilled or whatever is quite a mouthful. So we are not the ones who can lift that alone. And anybody who would like to participate in this journey and discuss it, contribute, find out, and so on, would be very welcome. We have our ideas, and we meet almost weekly and discuss things also with other people. But we do not have the final solutions, by far not. So anybody is welcome, and our view is that anybody probably have something to contribute with, and we need all ideas as it is now.
I just want to share a few thoughts. I think it's a great presentation, by the way. Thank you, team, for your amazing work here. Very inspiring. What I keep thinking about is, lifelong upskilling. For some, that is the normal, right? Some of us, we love learning. We seek new knowledge. We keep upskilling ourselves. So it's not everybody that has this problem, but I think if we need to look for who can we solve this problem for, it's gonna be people who get disrupted, whose life is getting disrupted by what we are seeing. Technologies are changing industries and making your jobs obsolete, and then you hit rock bottom, and you need to upskill yourself to find your next career, find your next job opportunities, whatever that may be. And I think one kind of scenario that could be interesting, in my opinion, to explore with what you're doing could this be kind of the safety net kind of of human being that whose life is being disrupted, whose kind of jobs are lost, never to come back, right? Lots of people are doing really well, fortunately. That's amazing. Lots are actually great at accessing excellent content on YouTube, upskilling themselves, doing courses, and have great employers and all that are investing in them. But many other people are. Let's go back to the truck driver example Gabriel gave. I think it's a great example. I was just hearing an interview recently, a young boy in Denmark, a young man. His big dream in life was to become a truck driver. Obviously, you can imagine what I was thinking to myself, but he was so passionate about it, and he did it, and he got his driver's license. He was very motivated. He upskilled himself, and he became a truck driver. And there may be jobs for him, right, for years to come. But many others will be losing their jobs as a truck driver. And I think we only get motivated, I think it's part of human behavior, that we only get motivated to change when we have to, honestly. So maybe what you're doing is something that is there when you do hit rock bottom, and now you're motivated to change. How do I do this? And you will be there as that partner, as that community to help. And you might be an owner of an SME that gets disrupted, and you're closing down. One reason I'm here in Morocco today is that 50,000 new businesses are closing every year because the invoices are not being paid by governmental or large corporations. They don't pay their invoices or not pay them on time. They have to close their otherwise quite interesting new businesses. What do you do now? So then you're in a position where you need to upskill yourself, right? So this is a massive problem, and it could be interesting to apply the community attribute which you represent with this initiative on this problem. Could be here in Morocco, could be pretty much anywhere else where we see the same challenges, right? So this could be one scenario to play with. Back to you for thoughts.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that, Lars, and I love that vision, and I think that
Yes.
A lot of safety nets will be needed to really embrace all these people and companies that are going through this process. And the question is, again, and that's why I love to think about this, like I have a lot of similarities with the climate change crisis, because like everybody knows about it, but just a few things are doing. We still know, and we're still doing the same things, and we didn't change mainly our behaviors. So the question here is just like how we can help and maybe try to avoid that hit bottom and try to do it before. That's a question. I don't know the answer now.
Can I jump in for a second? I was thinking along similar lines as Lars, I think, and I'm just again coming back to the SMEs and your desire to impact reskill a billion people. I think targeting isolated or random or individual SMEs, it might be a harder way to do that rather than picking SMEs within a particular industry that's getting disrupted. They're losing their businesses, their employees need to go somewhere. How can we tap into those kinds of disruptive forces and steer them to this platform and this community?
Yeah, definitely.
That's a very good idea, yeah.
Just to start, it's definitely we need to pick one specific industry, one vertical, to focus on. Definitely, I agree on that.
Yes,
Well,
and there are some industries who are in the danger zone or even are being disrupted now. So it's a very good idea to look at it.
I hope you have very big teams, because we can help you across the board with that. It's very exciting to see how far this has come. The presentation is beautiful in such a way that it's much more easy to understand. Klaus, it's lovely to see you again, and gentlemen. But I think that in the arts world, music education, the story of who we are, the 50 years, all of those who've helped to get us where we are today along the way have incredible contributions, and myself too in the journey across the board, having watched quite a bit of this. I can help lead you and put together the various groups and conversations that you might need to advance this really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice,
right.
Nice. So I don't know if we have any other thing, Lars, just to sum up. But our idea is just to keep working on this initiative and hopefully have some more clear answers to most of the questions that were here. I think there are a lot of things that are very important. I think it's a really good feedback to add to our initiative, to putting them together and thinking on the next couple of next steps.
Yeah.
What we could do is what is next on the agenda, what you want to talk about. If you can get that to me, then I can put together a group of people and we can have a call and you can get the feedback. I think that might work. Yeah. Work well, and we definitely have some key leads that you want to speak one-on-one with.
Nice.
I can
Thank you for that offer, because we need sounding boards. We need somebody to discuss our ideas with. We are three who have very good discussions, but more people looking at what we try to do would be very helpful. So thank you for your offer.
Mm-hmm. There's whole groups of music educators and yeah. And if they see that glimmer of hope and a listening, that's going to be a magical thing for them these days, and especially across Canada, across North America.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Start with me.
Yes, start with me. Also start with our amazing sprint team, actually, that is going through the sprint week 1 right now, researching, and you have pretty much the whole team actually on this call. So what I suggest is to explore the research that they are doing this week, right? They're going to present that back to the whole community as part of the report out. And that might inspire you as well, because they're exploring the same challenges, looking at the disruptive startups, exponential technologies, global trends. And even though you're done and you are the masters of doing the research on this, clearly. So, but there could be some new input from the other team's research that could inspire you, and then have conversations with the team. So that could be something to schedule a call between the two teams. And who knows, maybe you find different paths forward, and that's fine. Or maybe you want to, do a merger and and become one family and join forces, right? Both are options. So that's an opportunity right there. Yeah.
Let me. The only thing I want to do right now is just to add the link for our mighty network. So I think it's gonna be a good idea to have everybody there to join us and be in one place. So I'm putting now the link here.
Are you putting in the chat?
Yeah, so that's there. It's the link to join our community, our network. So if you can join us, I think it's gonna be a good way to keep updated and all the communications and ideas and set up new meetings, all that stuff. That's the place to be.
That's the place to be. Sanjay?
Lars, can you hear me? I've got you on two screens. Thank you so much. It's just amazing, amazing initiative you guys have. Maybe just a question or a thought. You know, you asked for a sounding board. Have you considered maybe just having maybe pitching some of your thoughts to a very small group of people and doing what, well, we've used this technique in what some of the work I do called questions and questions, where you're presenting and essentially you've got maybe a small grouping of people that just fires questions upon you in terms of what you presented that build on top of one another. And it's just another way of getting people to reflect and also to look at what they're doing very, very differently. A quick exercise, maximum probably 5 to 7 minutes, where you go and you present, here's the initiative, very short. And literally it's like a brainstorm, but the difference here is that you're not brainstorming ideas. You're essentially brainstorming questions that get thrown at you. And after that, you could typically use that as an amazing tool to go back and just review what you've said and see if something sticks out for you. Just a thought.
Do you have examples, or could you be the moderator at such an event?
I'm happy to do it. I mean, it's actually a very simple exercise. I can actually do it now with you if you want, but very simply, if you just, here's the thought, maybe everybody, based upon what you've just heard Gabriel and Klaus present, can you maybe enter the top 3 questions that came to mind upon what based on what they presented, and maybe just stick it in the chat room? It's as simple as that. People put a whole bunch of questions, and then it's for you as a team to go back and look at the questions that they've posed, and essentially maybe you can cluster them. You could look at these questions and say, okay, which of these questions have you answered incredibly well? Which of these are we lacking in? Where are the gaps? Where are the holes? Or sometimes also through this process, you find a lot of ideas coming up that you never thought about. And it's raised because of questions people have asked, or instead of statements they've made. It's just a different technique.
Mm-hmm.
Good, perfect. I think that's a really good exercise.
Yes.
Nice. Good, everybody. So I think it's
Good. Maybe what you want to do in your mighty network could be to get everybody's questions and inputs. Could be as a post in there, or maybe you want to schedule a call for that to kind of have the live interaction, or maybe both, and take input. It is very helpful what Sanjay proposes here. It gives an exponential growth in number of ideas and feedback immediately. Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Yes.
I just wanted to throw in a thought. And Gabriel, the reason why I asked for the customer journey, it's because my father, he has an SME himself, and he's really in the situation that you guys are explaining, where he has, the company's been around for 30 plus years, and his employees as well, right? So the cost for them to hire, especially in Colombia, people that already have the skills is very high. Also to train them and really get them to understand what the company is doing and what they're trying to head. So he's really interested in upskilling his staff, right? But then there's already government plans who are doing this, that they're presenting to their teams like training programs. So the problem about this is that there's so many trainings out there, right? So I really kind of like wanted to understand how you're thinking on approaching this. Like, I know for sure there are companies who are willing to jump in and train their staff, but then it's kind of very complicated for them to get started. So our team, as Lars was saying, it's focusing on lifelong learning for adults and SMEs. And it would be great to discuss this, because we also share that feeling that there's a big need, and would be happy to contribute to figuring this out.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think, Diana, for just supporting what you are saying, it's just what I think that's something we already shared, but it's just not a matter of the content or the trainings, because you have already plenty of courses. If you go to online courses, you have a lot of options from Coursera, Udemy, Corp Academy, whatever you want, you have already there. So the issue here is just not like the content or the courses, but how you really implement them, how you really go with these companies through the process, because otherwise that way would be.
You disappeared, Gabriel.
Oh, sorry.
But would it be an idea if your father or whomever met our team online for half an hour, and discuss the situation he is in? We have a lot of experience, and there are also things we don't know anything about, but an exchange of ideas in a case like that could be interesting for both parties.
Yes, definitely. I'd be super happy to do that. I mean, it got to the point where the fastest solution that we found was hiring someone, and it would be great to get to talk to you and figure out some other solutions to this problem. And again, going back to Gabriel, I also agree it's about the implementation, right? Because the courses are available, and they have done it so many times and failed, and not actually gotten to implement it, that the frustration is just growing higher and higher. And now with that frustration grows like an eagerness to continue training, right? So definitely super happy to jump on a call with you and involve my dad.
Yeah. How do we set that up?
I'll put my email in the chat.
Right.
You can.
Then we'll mail you and see to set up a meeting and just see what's the situation and what do we feel about it, and we can learn something about it too. Definitely. Don't you think, Peter and Gabriel?
Yeah,
Sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. Let's see what we can come up together.
Yes.
Excellent. We have some actions on the table.
Yeah.
So looking forward to hear how this plays out and be part of it. So thank you very much to the NewSkillup team for giving us an update here. It's very inspiring. I think there's a ton of opportunity, huge problems that needs to be solved all over the world. And I think it's an exciting opportunity for us to crack this nut and help millions of people. So let's do this. Thank you very much to the team presenting. Thank you to all of you for your support. Love you guys.
Very interesting.
Speak to you all soon. Yes.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.